Welcome everybody to the big show. Today we are going to talk about how to create a profitable detail department. There's going to be some surprises in there. It's a great conversation. We also talk about Christian's experience with a pole and a star and range anxiety. And there's stuff in the news and much, much more coming up on this edition of Service Drive Revolution. I would like to remind everybody that we have started this incredible series called the Irreplaceable Service Manager Live Lecture Series, where I'm going through the book chapter by chapter, kind of an expanded version of it, telling some stories, some experiences, updating it a little bit. We also have priced it so anybody can afford it because we want to have you there. It's kind of my way of paying a tribute to a book that has sold very well and made a difference in a lot of people's lives before we come out with our leadership book.
The next lecture, I think, is probably going to be one of the meatiest lectures.
Because it's Mr. X.
Yeah, that's when you don't want to miss.
Mr. X.
I think that'll be better.
People have read that chapter and cried.
Yeah, that's
a
amazing.
lot of people have said that that's them, like that chapter.
Yeah.
And you couldn't, like, if you were writing a book, you couldn't fictionalize that chapter and have it be authentic. It had to be somebody. It was.
Well, when you hear Mr. X talk about it, I'm going to guess that it'll hit you that there's not a huge difference between him and you. There's just something about him that just you want to hear him talk about his experience. Yeah,
but some of the stories we'll talk about, you might be surprised how much of a dance it was between him and I in the beginning.
I believe that. And you would, because I wouldn't guess it now. Because he doesn't look like a person. I don't have to dance with him. You knocked it out of him.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't describe it as knocking it out of him. I would describe it as I got him to have some success, and then that made him believe.
Okay.
And then he did it on his own. But I went with him into the fire until he had some success.
Great.
If that makes sense.
I can't wait to hear it. So I'm just a fan on the next one. It's going to be a lot of fun. Really fun.
Tell everybody about your experience with the electric.
Jeez Louise.
So there's a Tesla. By the way, my chick rented a Tesla when she went to San Francisco.
And you know how she got that? Not through a rental car company.
Right. Did she ask you for help?
No, we talked about it this morning.
Oh. Yeah, through Turo, which I learned from you.
Yep.
When you had a Tesla, you used to rent it on there, right?
I did, yeah. It was easy.
But I told her, they'd drop it off at the airport. It was really easy. So she had a great experience.
Yeah.
But she rented the one that you had, the 3. Is it called the 3?
Yeah, the smaller one.
Yeah. Not the same as her Plaid.
No, hers is way more of a. I could see her.
She's a little spoiled.
Yeah, I could see her struggling with that transition. But yeah. So she told me that she did that, and I think the thing about Turo that I really, really like is that the owner of a car that's renting it to you has so much more skin in the game than a rental car company. So like their attention to detail and what they're willing to do to try to make the customer and yeah, their rating matters a lot to them. And being a master renter or whatever, there's like levels that you get within Turo. And I just think that every time I've ever done it, so I've rented my car out on Turo, and I remember how much I cared about like how clean the car was and making sure that it was fully charged and that I made it easy for the person to get. And like I really became a business person during that rental. And then when I've gone and rented cars, because I've rented several on the other side, it's always been a phenomenal experience. I love the whole like drop it off at the airport and they just send you a picture of where the thing's parked at. It's so easy. So that's great. But I didn't do that most recently when I went and hung out in Florida for the weekend. So I usually rent through the same company, and I will tell you that
It's one of the big rental companies
Yeah.
that puts your name on the sign, unless you're with me,
which
and
your
then
name never hits the
shows
sign.
up on the sign.
Yeah, so mine does. They do a really, really good job.
There's always some reason why my name isn't on the sign.
Yeah, it's really funny. But in this particular case, I was just kind of thumbing through, and there was one vehicle that was like half the price of all the other ones, and it was an electric car. And I'm like, okay, so if they give me a Tesla, then I already know how to use it.
How much was it a day?
$50 a day.
$50 a day.
So $50 a day. I was there for 2 days, and I got there, and again, like usual with this company, it was really easy to get the paperwork done.
Was your
everything
name on
like
the
that.
board?
They didn't have a board at that airport, but they had my paperwork all pre-done, and essentially I just had to get the keys and go. So it was pretty easy. So I went out there, and then
An electric car has a key?
yeah, this one did. So it looked like your key fob for your
So
Land Rover.
would you
It looks
please
like the
tell
same
everybody
thing.
what kind of electric car?
It's a Polestar. It was the Polestar 2, which is kind
What
of.
do you think about when you hear the name Polestar? Do you think about the North Pole?
No, am I allowed to say?
Does it involve the word dancing?
Yes.
No, you're not allowed to say
Okay, so it doesn't. Yes.
No.
Okay.
that. What you think about is the North Pole or the
Right.
South Pole.
So it was a Polestar.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So that was
With
the
a
car.
key.
With a fob. There's nowhere to put the key, but it was just a key fob. So it's
Okay.
like it looks like what your Range Rover key
For
looks like.
$50 a day.
For $50 a day.
Seems like a bargain.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'm all in. So the thing I
Now,
noticed.
did you think that it was a Tesla when you were renting it?
I did think it was.
So
gonna,
it just says electric car. Is there a picture of a Tesla?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a bait and switch.
a little bit of a bait and switch because it was Tesla 3 or comparable model.
I hate that.
So yeah, so I got hit with the whole.
That happens to me quite frequently when I go to Seattle. The car that I reserve on the website isn't the car that they have.
Yeah. So this was a very interesting vehicle. So the first thing that I noticed, and I had a Model 3 extended range, right? So
What would be the range on that?
like let's say 330
And is that enough for you to do the activities you were going to do in Florida?
by far, for sure. So this one, when I got in, it was over 92% charged, and the total rating, I had 230 miles. Now,
So it's a little shorter range.
so it's 100 miles shorter. Now, here's the thing where I knew I was in trouble. Before I drove off the airport, I'd gone from 230 to 210 miles of charge.
Going out of the airport.
Yes, and this is a small airport.
How fast were you going out of the, were you in a hurry? Like, were you driving like Christian, scaring the living bejesus out of everybody?
No, I would say normal. Let's say it's 45 miles an hour in the zone.
My
I was
normal or your normal?
Probably closer to your normal than my normal. Like I was doing the speed limit.
So there isn't a I don't know, like a common way to report that. Like it's left up to the manufacturer at this point.
That's right. So
the thing could say you had 1,000 miles, and then by the time you get to the airport, you got 800.
That's right. So it was a very similar thing to that. So I got out and I noticed that it had already lost, whatever, a few percentage points on the total, and then it had gone down 20 miles. And I'm like, okay, so that's interesting. And then I get out. It's 40 miles from the airport to where I pick my son up at. And so I'd gone from 230 to 160 is when I picked him up. And then I'm like, I start to do the math in my head. Now I will tell you, so my total mileage traveled from day one to returning the car, 192. And I had to charge twice. Now here's the problem. So I'm pretty spoiled with Tesla. They've got the supercharger network, right? So you can literally charge, like, you can give yourself a couple of 100 miles worth of charge in an hour or less. But the plug that works for the Polestar is like your standard electric car. So I couldn't go
Like
to
what
it.
would be in a Chevy Volt?
Yes. or a Ford F-150 Lightning or whatever, right? So it's like your standard electric car. So they have an app that they have you download, and it starts to give you all of the different options for chargers and everything like that. So in this area where I was at, which is St. Augustine, Florida, beautiful place if anyone ever wants to visit. But
or move there.
a lot of people do move there. It's it's not as hot as normal Florida cities, but I'm a big fan. I lived there for a couple of years.
Alligators and water moccasins and snakes.
Yeah, I've seen all of those things while I've been there. But
if you're willing to part with your dog, your small pets,
it's the place to go. So so then it becomes the weekend, which I didn't have a lot of time, right? So I'm going out there and I'm leaving on a Friday and coming back on Sunday night because I got to work on
But
Mondays.
the app tells you where to go to charge it, right?
And the app tells you where to go to charge it. So this isn't the problem. Plenty of places to go charge it.
What's the problem?
Guess how many miles per hour the charge system was?
Oh, slow.
It said 10 to 14, but it was closer to 10.
Ooh. So they got problems with that car.
So I don't know if it's the car or the chargers or whatever it is, but the problem is, and you know me really well, right? So would I rather sit somewhere for 6 hours and charge for free, or would I rather pay and have it done in 45 minutes? I would much rather pay, but it wasn't an option. So either that the infrastructure isn't good enough in that part of the world, or the car isn't good enough that it can't accept a fast charge. But either way, I worked my weekend around charging the car.
Yeah, that's all the stress.
And that wasn't cool.
The wheel is turning, but the hamster's dead.
Yes, the hamster was dead. It's a dead hamster. But I would say, like, drive-wise, now when I got on it, it felt just as fast as a Tesla. They have a screen in the middle, just like
As
the
you
Tesla.
watch the range go down.
Yeah, that's funny. But I definitely had ranging.
What did your son think of it?
He likes it better than the Tesla. I don't know why.
Huh.
So, but he's got weird taste in cars. Like
And
what
he
makes
doesn't
him.
have, he doesn't have range anxiety.
No, and whatever makes him like or not like a car has nothing to do with how the car operates. But yeah, so that was my electric car story, and I wonder if that's what it's like. I'd heard about this. I didn't print it for the news, but there was a guy. I think maybe you sent me this. A guy did like a road trip in his F-150 Lightning, and it was just a disaster. And they ended up. It was so terrible. They left their truck at a Ford dealer and rented a gas truck to finish their vacation. So I wondered.
A lot of people are jumping in and then feeling like it's not for them.
Yeah, like they got duped. Like it's just not honest.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some work to do there. But yeah, so that's my electric car rental story. First time I've ever rented an electric car.
Weeks ago when we had the category 4 Hillary. It's so funny that they named it Hillary.
Yeah.
Hillary Hurricane. I was thinking that I was glad I had the Range Rover and gas.
Yeah, so you
because I could get out of there if I had to, and also it'll go through water. I don't think the Tesla is going through standing water, is it?
Not that I've seen.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to drive it through water.
Where would you charge? I would just be worried about it.
Yeah, if there's no electricity.
I mean, that's an odd event, but I went and filled up the Range Rover, and I was ready to put all 4 Bulldogs in there and drive to Washington or whatever I had to do.
Yep. It wasn't that bad.
It was like a rainstorm.
It was a rainstorm.
It was fun to watch them on the news try to make it into something.
Yeah, so
that's an art to make something scary that isn't scary. Like the people in Baja had it pretty bad.
Yeah,
but
like
I don't think too many people here had it.
When
bad.
it hit Baja as a category 3, that's you
real.
feel that. That's terrible. And I've been through several hurricanes, so I feel like I can
Well, yeah, that's
speak
the other thing in Florida: the water moccasins, the
don't forget
snakes, the
about the
alligators, and
hurricanes.
the hurricanes.
Yeah, and then the tornadoes.
Don't
after
they have
the
a
hurricanes.
football team named after the Hurricanes?
Yeah, the Miami Hurricanes. It's my favorite college team. So the thing that who went to the University of Miami?
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Ray Lewis, didn't he go to Miami?
Didn't Michael Irving and all those Jimmy Johnson guys?
Yeah, a lot of those guys did.
Jason Witten, didn't he go there? I don't
Yes.
know, there's a bunch.
Yep.
They've had a lot of good players.
Yeah, they definitely put a lot of alignment come out of the U. Whoa, I digress. But I think at the end of the day, the descriptors at the news I remember reading one of those things. It was like from CNN or LA Times or something like that, where it says Hillary takes dead aim at California, like it's gonna kill people.
Yeah, there were funny memes with Hillary
Clinton
Yeah, her
killing people.
face making like weird faces as she goes up the coast. It's pretty funny.
It was I think that California reacted to that just how I thought they were going to.
The hurricane kind of finished the same way she finished running for president. Like,
That's
kind
great.
of with a...
That's a great parallel.
Aw. It was a little rain.
How would you describe the hurricane?
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. I mean, you know what it felt like after is just that, I don't know, everything was clean.
Yeah, it was good sleeping weather.
Yeah, it's great. I grew up in Washington, so
Yeah.
rain doesn't affect me.
No, I'm pretty immune to that stuff too.
So what's in the news before we get to how do we make a detail department profitable?
I think it's important that you guys know that that Ford is not in the news today. but we are going to talk.
My stepdad really want him to get one of those Gladiator diesels. They can't sell them.
I've got people that have told me that that they'll get them for you.
Can you put me in touch with them?
Yeah.
But they can't sell them though. They're not allowed to. They have a recall.
Is there a stop sale?
Yeah. They have a bunch of them up in Washington. They just can't sell them.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. All right, so speaking of that,
I have a funny story about that.
On
We should
the,
talk about it sometime.
I can't wait. The Nissan, the company Nissan, one of my first car company I ever worked for, by the way, near and dear to my heart.
First new car I ever bought.
Oh, really?
Pathfinder, yeah.
God,
Because I was a drummer.
What year was that?
Oh my gosh.
Was those
Let me think
boxy
about
ones?
that. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
It
I
was
love
great.
the way those
Because you know I
looked.
could put my drums in there and they would stay out of the weather. Because I had
Yeah.
a truck before that in Seattle.
Yeah, so I always thought that
Oh, it
those
was the greatest. My payment
yeah,
was $2.99,
That's great.
and I was so over on miles.
Yep, and the
I think I had to pay like $2,000 at the end in miles.
and that was probably only at 10 cents a mile back then, so
Yeah.
you were way over.
Way over.
That's great. I thought that those things always looked like your classic Land Rover. I always thought the Pathfinder, the old ones,
I love that thing.
they're like pre
I
'97.
got two
so,
of them. I traded in and got another one.
my gosh, I don't blame you.
Didn't help me with the mile penalty though.
Yeah, I've had two Pathfinders too. I liked
Yeah.
them, and 4 Maximas.
Love, it was a great car.
Yeah, so I think those are wonderful.
Also
vehicles.
had a cell phone in my second one that when I would turn it on, the lights would dim around. Like one of those bricks. I thought it was so cool until I got my $800 cell phone bill.
Yeah. Yeah, you know who else
Then I
had
never
those
turned it on.
who had those cell phones, those expensive cell phones? Benz. Remember those Mercedes had
Yeah,
those cell
had
phones
'em in the
there?
center.
Oh my gosh, so expensive. But you felt pretty cool with the phone in the car. But Nissan is recalling 236,000 Sentras for steering problems. Now, when I think about important things that a car can do, steering is really close to the top of the list.
Hey, our Nissan clients use that as a chance to do an inspection.
So they're going to get to see
Make some
236,000 and 2020, 21 model years. So you got cars that are over 3 years old now coming in for this,
Yeah,
which
it's
is great. So good opportunity for our Nissan folks. Then we've got
pet the dog.
another like really prime year on a recall. Honda recalling 1.2 million Odysseys and Pilots. Now listen to this year range, 2018 to 2023. How would you like to get your hands on a 2018 to 2020 Honda? That's a great opportunity. But there's an issue with the rear camera, which means that people have to come up for another reason why they're terrible drivers in reverse.
Clunk clunk.
I just heard somebody talking about this the other day that they park by feel. Like when they run into something, they stop and then go the other direction.
There's so many people that have never driven a stick, never driven without backup camera.
Like they'll never know the art of putting your arm on the passenger seat.
There'll be a whole generation of kids that don't know how to look before they change lanes.
Right.
Because there's lane detectors.
Yeah. And actually how to manipulate a side mirror or rear view mirror so that it's effective. That's hilarious. And then this is a little bit funny, and I think that you'll probably have stories like this in the Irreplaceable Service Manager live lecture series, and it just made me think of it, so that's why I wanted to bring this one up. North Carolina Nissan dealership employees face more than 400 criminal charges. So that's a lot of charges. But I think it was like 8 employees in total between management and the accounting departments. And
ouch! What
essentially,
are they doing?
there's several allegations, but actually selling salvage title cars without disclosing it to the customer.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's not good. Apparently,
it's not good.
So that's a treat to learn as a customer that you don't have a clean title on a car you just spent $20,000 on. But yeah, so
now on to the question that is burning in everybody's mind.
That's
How
right.
can I make a detail department profitable?
There are ways. There are so many ways. Actually, there's only a couple of ways. Never mind.
Like it's
this big complex thing. But it is one of those things. I don't know how much you really focused on the detail stuff, other than I bet you probably had it really dialed in when you were GMing the BMW store, because that's just how your brain works. But I think the first thing is the approach that people have with a detail shop is that it's a necessary evil and not a profit center. I think that's probably the first thing that I see that people do wrong with detail departments, is that there's nothing strategic about what they're doing back there.
So I have built a few really good detail departments that you could say are profitable.
Yeah.
The first thing that I do, especially when I go into a market that I don't know a lot of people, is I find a local detail supply company that provides training.
Great.
So I will sit down with them and I will say, here's the deal. I'll buy all my detail stuff. We'll buy the floor mats, whatever, like all the stuff from you. What I need is training that I can bring in some, kids that have some ambition, and you're going to turn them into detailers. You're going to come in the beginning once a week and then every other week, but you're going to train them. That usually is the beginning of starting something, is having that training and having a relationship with somebody who also, when you get in trouble, can come and, clay a car or whatever. Yeah.
And usually when you build that relationship with them, then at least you're going to be on a level playing field with the supplies that you buy.
Yeah.
So they're not going to want to they're not going to want to do anything to mess that relationship up.
So I would say that a lot of people's approach to detail supplies is grinding on the price.
Yeah.
And that's a way, and you want to be fair on the price, but I'll tell you that if there's a detail supply company out there that has really good training, I will pay more.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, when you're focused on price, that's a little different, I think, than I approach it. It's not necessarily, I want the best products, but more importantly, I think that it has less to do with how much you pay for it and how much you use. Because I think that so many people aren't tracking what it takes, what kind of chemicals and materials it takes to do a car. So I think that people are super wasteful because they're not thinking about it. So whatever it is, whether it's buffing compound or interior cleaning or the things that you put on to make the car smell better, I don't think that anybody's tracking it, so they don't have like a cost in mind of what it is, and they overuse the product so much that even if they get it cheap, they use twice as much. But if you have a really good training, a company come in and they teach you how much you're supposed to use.
Yeah.
So I think that the cost is actually not what you think it is.
And I would also say that the better companies out there have good products. Like, I know people are loyal to certain products, but they're kind of all the same.
Yeah, there's
You're not going to be a good detail company and sell stuff that doesn't get the job done.
yeah. I think that there's some that work a little bit better than others, but it's all apples to apples at the end of the day. But I think that
So that's my first
your first is
first
training.
thing on the bus.
Okay.
No, the relationship and the training. So I have constant improvement, and I also have a resource to help when quality isn't there or there's a problem, that sort of thing.
Okay, that's good. So my first is that you have to treat it like a business, not like an necessary evil. Whereas you have to understand how much it costs you to detail a car.
So walk me through that math. How
Okay.
do you figure that math?
So when you think about it, at the end of the day, there are certain costs to doing let's say it's a full detail on a customer car. So the easy stuff is the human part of it, right? How much you pay somebody actually to clean it. But then also, what are other expenses you would incur during doing a detail? Water would be, so the cost of the car wash portion. Then all the materials and the chemicals,
Supplies.
electricity, supplies, everything like that. So when
Mistakes.
yeah, so when I set this up in my store, I had it down to pretty accurately how much it cost me to do a detail. So I knew how much it would cost me with materials. I knew how much it would cost me in water. I knew how much it would cost me in human labor. All that stuff was to where I had a cost figured out.
Okay, so can we make a distinction between a used car detail and a customer detail?
So that is my number 2, is that not all details are created equally. Because I think in a lot of cases, if you're not looking at this like it's a business, a detail is a detail is a detail. And I could think of, I just started listing them out, and I came up with like 5 or 6 different types of details. I think that a used car detail is different than a new car prep. I think a customer pay detail is different than a used car detail. I think a truck is different than a car.
So can we just take the used car detail and talk through how you'd cost it out?
Sure. So essentially with a used car detail.
So how long on, just in the scenario, in the last time you did this, what was the time allotted for somebody to do a detail?
Yeah, so the used car detail, what I did is I timed somebody doing, I think that we did 4. We did 4 average cars just randomly pulled. And what we ended up doing is we found that realistically, start to finish, if I took out any kind of brakes or anything like that, a used car detail on a moderately dirty car was taking us roughly 2.5 hours to get it done. Now, so the backside of this is that I also, I paid those techs flat rate. So I costed that out at 3.5 hours.
Okay.
So I billed myself for 3.5 hours when I was figuring out my cost.
Okay, so that's a good way to do it, in the sense that I do think, like, because when people ask us like what should a detail pay, I do think that the market you're in, the climate conditions, and the type of system your used car department is running, like if your used car department's selling $79.95 cars versus $40,000 average used cars, the amount of work that it takes, there's different styles, there's different approaches. You could I've been in stores where the fair number is 5 hours.
Yeah, so I had it.
So I've gone all the way from 2.5 to 5.
Yeah, so within that I had 4 details. So there's a retail used car detail, and I forgot about that, the wholesale used car detail, where what you're doing is you're trying to make it look good so it goes through the auction at a higher price.
Yeah. But I'm just
yeah.
talking about just the normal used car detail, the bulk of what we're going to be doing for used car, which is just a used car detail. So 3.5, 4 hours is usually where I find that. Now, the thing that Christian's saying there that I think is really important, I don't want to be missed, is the detailers know that the average was 2.5 when they did the test on 4.
That's right.
And then he's saying, okay, it's going to pay 3.5. So a couple things are happening there. One is we're saying like, hey, you can make more money than just the time that you're here, right? You can increase your efficiencies like a flat rate tech could do. The other thing is you're also kind of building a little bit of a buffer in the quality conversation, because it isn't like, they get one that's a little dirtier, and the reason why they didn't do as good of a detail on it was because it paid 2.5. You're kind of, in a sense, building a little insulation to the quality conversation on top of that. So there's a couple reasons to do that. Also, don't lose sight of the fact that the used car department, or ultimately the customer, is paying for that detail. Just the cost of it has to be balanced out with the quality of it. If it's just everything as cheap as we can do, as quick as we can do, you'll end up spending a lot of time on the comebacks. It also does affect your service department in a abstract way, where if the customer gets into the car and they don't feel like it's clean, and they buy a used car, they're not as likely to think that they want to come to you for service. They are attributing that to the service department in a lot of cases.
It's a representation of how the work we do.
So if you want to get those cars back into your service drive, the quality and the how they feel when they take delivery has an effect on your retention of those customers later on. And so just focusing on the fastest and the cheapest, usually a lot of used car managers have that narrative, but it's not long-term the best strategy. And at the end of the day, these conversations sometimes drive me crazy, because we're talking about $50.
Right.
If you're going to lose a used car deal over $50 or $100,
you need new salespeople.
Or there's a right way and there's a wrong,
That's
right? And so we're not talking about thousands of dollars. We're talking about, doing it right, customers' perception, customers, satisfaction in it, and the retention coming back is more important than just shaving it to the bone.
Yep, exactly. And when you pay a good amount, and I'm not talking about customer pay details right now. I'm just talking about the used car stuff. When you're paying a really fair flat rate, the turnaround time's way faster. I'd had a lot of times where
the culture is get to work.
That's right.
Because I can make time.
That's right. And the thing I think that keeps a car from selling is the condition. So let's say that even if you take pictures, get a car on the internet, but it hasn't been detailed yet, and somebody comes to look at it, it's not worth whatever you need to get out of it, because it doesn't do the whole dopamine release in the customer's head and be like, oh, I can imagine that in my driveway.
Yeah, and so that brings up another point that I think is important, is when you're setting your pricing for this sort of thing, on a used car detail, on a new car detail too, I think it's really important to build in a get ready.
Yep.
Because a car can sit on the lot, and it could have been test driven by people with muddy shoes, and then we sell it to somebody. Now when they own it, their perception of how clean it is changes, right? It's not just a test drive. Now they own it, and they expect it to, be at a certain level. So including in your pricing 30 minutes for a get ready, that's just a part of the detail. That get ready does a lot of positive things for you.
That's great. And that way you've also, I think that's brilliant. But as I'm just kind of thinking out loud, then even the detail technician doesn't feel like they're redoing work for free on something they didn't screw up. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and they're gonna get, you can't guarantee that, so if you detailed the car on a Monday and it sells on a Friday and you're off and I get that car, I still get a half an hour to do it, but I also get to see your quality.
Yeah, and you're also never going to forget to put in like that plastic protective covering on the floor mat.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff just makes it better.
Because you can make time on that half an hour too.
Yeah, that's really smart. Yeah, because some of them are just going to fly right through.
But some of them that sit for a while, it's going to take a little longer. You're going to win, you're going to lose. But that's the one where you're winning and losing a little bit, right? The get ready.
That's great.
But the get ready has to be a 4-alarm fire. Like those are going, right? You're doing a lot of those on a Friday, Saturday on your busy days. Okay, so then do you feel like we covered the flat rate part of it?
Well, I think that the only thing I wanted to say with flat rate is that I always think that there are like what I call add-ons. Okay, so one of the things I think that like as a customer you would never know this, but as a detailer you do. Pet hair, for instance. So seriously, I mean, I
got to Texas and I had clothes in my suitcase that came from the dry cleaner.
That had
and there
pet hair
was
on 'em?
bulldog hair on them.
Yeah. So imagine how hard that is to get out of car carpet. So what I had is I had additional units. So I would have a pet hair unit, like that. It would be an extra half hour or whatever it is, and it would be like, okay, but this is an Escalade, so and the back's bad, the middle's bad, and the front's bad, and I'm gonna have to charge an extra 2 or 3 units for pet hair removal. And then same thing with like a wet sand and a buff was not part of a detail for me. So I always said that there were products that we could sell above and beyond what a normal detail was, because I just don't think that that's fair to ask somebody to pull out, a wet sand and buff on a car that normally just gets hand wax. So I think that when it comes to flat rate, like there's like the standard level of exception. Understanding there's clean cars and dirty cars, but like a pet hair and like needing a wet sand and buff, dent removal, windshield chips, all that stuff could be flat rate add-ons. So I think that that's kind of the other thing. And then usually what I did, I don't know if you did this or not, but my customer pay detail was always the highest paying one, because I charged the customer more than I charged the used car department.
So I did that a little bit different in the sense that I would charge, so I would have a menu for customers.
Yep.
And the goal was that we would sell like 2 a day out of the drive. But at the top of the menu, there would be like the complete recon. You've seen the menus, right?
Yeah, like at a car wash where you get the good, better,
but
best.
But at the top is like a $1,500 detail.
Ceramic coat, graphene, the whole thing.
If you can, you're spraying the bumpers like, like a real, it takes 2 days to do it kind of a thing. You don't sell that many of those, but what it does is it makes the one for $350
look really attractive.
Yeah. And then I was doing that one for $2.5.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that $1,500 one was comparable to the used car. The $250 was just a detail.
Oh, I don't hate that. Yeah, I always thought that if I paid more on it, because I wanted the one that the customer came in and they paid all that money for, I wanted them to tell their friends. So I thought of it as an advertising tool. So I wanted that to be like the juice work for the flat rate. But I understand why you did what you did. And I love that idea of a bumper spray, like full on. Like if you're going to go sell it, I would do that because you would get more than the $1,500 out of it just because of the way it would look. That's really cool.
Then there's things you can build into, like in that $1,500 one, they get a little kit of tire dressing and wax and different things.
Yeah, the take-home package.
Nothing that they would probably ever use, but it's the idea that they have it.
It's tactile and they get something out of the deal.
Yeah.
That's great. It's funny. We've known each other for a long time. I don't think we've ever talked about this before.
Really? For a long time, that was just something I would set up at the, in Service Drive Judo, the greeter would hand the customers a menu. I've never shown you that menu.
No.
So the line is just, how would you like your vehicle clean today? And at the bottom is free.
Is the free car wash? Yeah.
Just wash. I don't even think it would include vacuum most of the time. And then the next one was the $350 detail, and then the $1,500.
So what you're controlling there, which is brilliant, is condition of vehicle.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that people get hit on the surveys, they said that they get hit on it because the car wash wasn't what they expected. But when you take the free option, it changes your perception of what it should be.
So
that's
from
really smart.
From the cabana to the drive, when the advisor meets them at the car, they have time to fill that thing out. So you hand them a pencil, like a golf pencil,
Yeah.
and then they would hand it to the advisor.
Do you spiff the greeter?
No, just the advisor.
Okay. Interesting.
No, it's just part of their process.
Yeah. I was just trying to think of a way to gamify it for them, but then maybe they come detail salespeople and they're not paying attention to how the car is being taken care of. But I don't know. It's a lot of fun.
The reason too that you're doing it there is then if the advisor is checking history and they're like, hey, you're due for an alignment and whatever, it's not competing.
Yeah. Or if there's a time
It's a
where
pregame.
like if they don't need anything, it might be a good day to get it clean because they have budget. Gosh, I like that a lot too.
So just recapping, having a relationship with a good chemical company that has training, having a mindset that it's a business, right? Flat rate, it's based on production. Having different menu items, understanding what you're profitable and what you're not, looking at your gross profit, your cost of chemicals. You said cost of water. I've never considered that, but the cost of chemicals for sure, and the cost of labor, and then selling them retail also. And then if you're really, really good, and I've gotten to this point a couple times, you can go around to other dealers and do their details.
Yeah, because most people stink at it.
Yeah.
I love that idea too.
So there's enough detail of work out there. It's like techs, right? If you have the techs, if you have the detailers and the quality's good, you can scale it.
Yeah. And there's and you can really change a person's life by giving them a skill like that.
Yeah.
Like these are people that are coming in and you're training them and they could never have had a job in their life and become really good detailers.
Yeah,
So-
a lot of the really good detailers don't know that they could be techs.
Yeah, but I think the skill set's the same.
Yeah.
That's great. I
fun.
love it.
So hopefully that helps you, gives you some ideas, and we appreciate you hanging out with us. And we'll
Heck
see
yeah.
you next time on Service Drive Revolution. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Service Drive Revolution. We're uploading new stuff every day, so make sure you subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss out. If you have a question you'd like us to answer on the show, call 8333-ASK-SDR and we'll answer your question on the show. That's 8333-ASK-SDR. For special deals on our books and training, head over to offers.chriscollinsinc.com. Now that's offers.chriscollinsinc.com. I'm Chris Collins, and I'll see you in the next video.